So I did something that a lot of you do that I didn't pick up as much on this because I wasn't around the internet for many, many years when it became quite widely available. So I was never somebody that got used to the idea of like what are they saying in the comments. And so I did something where I looked at a video, and one of the first things I did is I was like, okay, I'm going to go out of my way to find out what are they saying in the comments. So I was looking in the comments, and it was a video on cluster bombs, the Russian cluster bomb issue, or America using cluster bombs against Russia, sending them to Ukraine, and how this was going to be really is going to end up being a bad idea. It already is a bad idea. It's going to end up being a worse idea. So in looking at the comments, one of the key things I kept finding is that now the Democrats and progressives, the progressives are solidly anti-Russian to the point that this is obviously like these are a bunch of bigots who hate Russians. This is no longer anything remotely rational, because obviously these people have not looked into any of how this developed along the lines of there was a period of time where negotiation was possible. They also don't realize that Vladimir Putin recently pointed out that he went out of his way to offer a plan that was actually really good for Ukraine. It was a really good deal for them, and they should have taken it. And that Angela Merkel admitted that the whole point of the peace process for the EU and for NATO was simply to, and I mean quite literally, she said, to bide them time so that they could arm, that they could get ready for war. So all of Europe has sent Ukraine into war. So Ukraine, with the help of George Soros's organization and our money and our State Department, the Ukrainian people are taken over by a neo-Nazi junta that starts going after people who are legal citizens of the country and happen to be ethnically Russian. So this would be very, very akin to if America started going out of its way to do something to people of Mexican American heritage. That would just be heritage. It's and that there's no denying this. That this was reported for quite a bit of time, quite accurately. There's video recording. There's lots of articles on this. The whole world at one point was really like, what's up with these Ukrainian Nazis? And then that started to really die, because really there's some larger geopolitical game going on here. And so I started really kind of thinking, the fascinating part was how they've gotten the progressives and the Democrats to just become openly anti-Russian, like bigots against an ethnicity. And I was like, how do they, okay, no, really, there's got to be a pattern in the way that I have to see this elsewhere. And I'm like, that's what it is. For them, you see, they don't know shit about Ukraine, really. They don't know anything about the Ukrainians, or they don't really know anything about them. So they don't know really their norms or how they behave or anything like that. And they that's not what they wanted. What they do know are a lot of people in Western Europe, and they know that this is they're cucked out. That American women tell the Europeans to dance, and the Europeans dance themselves to exhaustion. Little retarded girls run Europe. A little retarded girl is who's deciding the future of Europe's prosperity. So Now, the United States has these people who are fundamentally like revved up, and I mean, so many people. There are lots of people on the right like this. It's fascinating how it caught up. That, and I'm betting Argent will say that he saw this, and maybe it's still going, that this whipped up Catholics on the right in a way that I was kind of surprised. This way that they see Putin, it was kind of fascinating. Just here and there, I was like, where are you getting? Do you not see who you are now on the side? Like, now who are you standing next to? Who else is thinking the way you're thinking? Like, look to your right and your left. Who do you see at your shoulders on this one? But what really occurred to me is, if I really think of how, in just loosely, it is how we portray Russia compared to Western Europe, I could see why the comments were like that. Russia is the last of the white race of males who might keep civilization going, to the liberals. The liberals are like, everybody else dances to our tune. They obey the little retarded girl. They listen to my mommy. They understand that, that my dad left because my mom was just too amazing, and I'm extremely special. And that's why I've always been overweight, because of my specialness, the extra special packaging. So that's, and really more and more, I think a lot of us, once we saw at one time a permissive, we were younger, we saw, boy, the parents are a lot more permissive, but the kids are, they're so nice, and they all wear helmets when they ride their bikes, and they're very polite and stuff. But we didn't really get this idea that one day they would become a generation of people that are like, why aren't you obeying too? That the rat that doesn't obey must die is now like where the millennials and Gen Z have gotten to. Chew the rat to death that won't obey the others. And so it's so there's no originality, almost no ability, that people, talentless people, getting each other hired in the creative fields, losing. I mean, I love that Hollywood is dying. I mean, I love that, and that physically it's dying. California is setting Hollywood up, or setting laws up now that Hollywood can't, they can't be there. They can't shoot movies there. They can't have their corporate headquarters in Anaheim or Hollywood or any of that anymore because of the way that the laws are becoming and the taxation. So now there's even a thing of Hollywood is slowly attempting to put studios in other places of low tax locations because they can't bear the California taxation. And so that's its own wonderful, yes, winning, but you're gonna get yours, But I really, for a while, I had to consider, because once I started looking into the theologies of the Catholics, the Protestants, and the Orthodox, and then I got to see various things from the Russian perspective in their news sources for years, I really did start to figure out, I'm like, no, these people are incredibly rational people. They're oddly calm and rational. And sometimes it betrays itself in insights in a moment that I'm just like, wow, that's a hell of an insight. Vladimir Putin doesn't come across in any way, shape, or form as some kind of madman. Anybody who follows what his speeches and stuff, actually it's almost insane when you hear people who are detractors. because the way he maps it out, he maps things out as this is the series of events that happened. And here's what we did. This is what international law says we're supposed to do. And so we did it. You all are doing something that's fucked up. And then you're just making up a story. And is what it kind of, and because America now is notorious for this, just making things up and coming up with a story, like, and how nobody, the Republican Party can't deal with Ukraine until it confronts how the Bush family was involved, the CIA, the Ukrainian Nazis. None of it can get there. There's no ending it in any way, shape, or form until that part of the truth comes out. How did we have any involvement with the Ukrainian people and nation in any way? How obvious for people who understand the strategic point of view, there's a part of it that it's like there's really just a lot of Americans who are like, no. What it is that we do have to control their ability to dominate the Mediterranean and the inner seas from the Crimean naval base, and because we're trustworthy, because everyone's supposed to trust us. Even though we put like a bizarre flag up on now our, we hoist a flag up illegally a lot of times once a year that countries complain about so that we could humiliate them. Specifically in black countries, black nations, that we could humiliate them and be like, look, yay, you don't like that. Oh, but we're doing that. Waving it in their face. And so more and more nations are like, well, why should we trust you and not trust the Russians? We know what they want. That's then another thing, that national interests and the frank admission of national interests. Frankly admitting one's national interests is extremely masculine. That it's effeminate when somebody is trying to hide their interests and trying to act like they're your friend, but really they have a specific interest. That's definitively effeminate. And so it's how we identify female relationships. And in a way, it would be wonderful if it was like interpersonal relationships, that the friendship would last and would bloom, and and nations would look after one another in a way. And there are some countries that have, for all their hostilities, because they're so small, they do end up having to kind of look out for one another like siblings compared to other nations around them. I would think like the Caucasus and small countries, small mountain countries now and then have to look out for one another. So that's my presumption when beset upon by from the outside. But yeah, an idea in my mind. I'd have to look it up. But really, I was struck by these comments, because people were laughing about like, oh, haha, yeah, oh, we're going to use those cluster bombs, yeah, oh, the genocidal Russians and this and that. If the Russians wanted to wipe out Ukraine completely, Ukraine would be completely undone by now. The raw manpower is there. I keep finding people thinking that they're that backward, that incompetent. I'm just like, and Ukrainians are these incredibly well-trained people? Like, are you kidding? What? How's that? And because it then becomes, oh no, you see, because that's the issue, is that the Ukrainians are like super amazeballs and the Russians are just inherently derpatized or something. That's how it keeps having to be this, like, you have to believe a lot. And when you start reading the sources from both sides, it just, the stuff's, the Russians have been consistently more credible. The sources that have been saying that Ukraine's losing have been consistently more credible. And, and whatever now this is going on with Prigozhin, that just took a weird turn. Prigozhin's not in Belarus. Prigozhin apparently has been seen in Moscow. And the security forces are saying they're not monitoring his whereabouts. So a big fat L for people who thought that, who thought, oh yeah, well, it's the end. And that's another one, is, oh, it's the end this time. Oh, Prigozhin, oh, the Wagner Group, oh, Putin, you're gonna get it now. And no, he didn't. No. It's another strange, mysterious W, and then it becomes that. It's one of these W's that, because of how badly the media is covering this in America and in Western Europe, we have no idea how crazy this Wagner thing went. Now that, Prigozhin's in Moscow, not in Belarus, what the fuck happened? Where'd the $6 billion go? Where'd the $4 to $6 billion go? I love when Razor Fist brought that up. They don't know where $4 to $6 billion are, and suddenly the Wagner Group does what it does. But not only that, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this completely preposterous coup against the Russian military or something goes tits up, and the guy who led the coup, even though he's supposedly leading this coup against this notorious, this is the baddest bad guy who's ever batted before, and now we're finding out he supposedly was going to take down Putin, and he's walking around Moscow right now. He's just chilling. And they told us a whole other story. Again. Yeah, they're total. Those cluster bombs are totally going to make it to Ukraine, and they're totally not going to get blown to smithereens en route or in storage.